Good afternoon. I'm Chad Parker, Deputy Administrator of Cooperative Programs at USDA Rural Development. And as I'm sure many of you know, October is Co-op Month. As a part of our celebration, we have been holding a series of events and webinars that showcase the many important ways that cooperatives can empower our daily lives. As maybe not as many of you are aware, October is also Farm to School Month. So we thought it would be fitting to host a webinar in partnership with our Food and Nutrition Service colleagues to celebrate both. More and more today, we're seeing the convergence of local food and co-ops. And while we often think about them in terms of producer co-ops selling into the local food marketplace, or consumer co-ops that shell food from local producers, one area that often goes unnoticed is the role of cooperatives in farm-to-school programs. Today, you'll hear firsthand from our co-op leaders providing multiple perspectives on this topic. Enjoy and have a happy co-op and farm-to-school month. I'll now turn it over to Jim Barham, Rural Development's local food expert.
Hey, thanks, Chad. I appreciate the welcoming remarks. And also on behalf of myself and the Cooperative Programs team, happy Co-op Month and happy Farm to School Month. Hopefully you all have enjoyed some of our other webinars and the other events that have been happening across rural development as well as across Food Nutrition Service. And you know, we're just a little more than halfway through, a lot more great stuff to come, so stay posted as we host a number of other webinars events going into our final week. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and talk about a couple just quick logistic things for this particular webinar. We won't be opening the lines for questions. Instead, we'll be using the chat box. So anytime you have a question, if it's a technical question or a content question, something that you really would like a little more clarification or want to go a little deeper on, by all means use that chat box. And as we go along through our different presenters, I'll be keeping tabs of the type of questions are there. And after a presenter, if we feel like it's a burning question that needs a little clarification before we move on to the next presenter, then that's fine. We'll go ahead and I'll ask the presenter to answer that question then. But if it seems like it might be a good question that several people could answer, we'll hold it to the end. So I'm hopeful that we can actually get through most of our questions that you have, but we can only answer them if you actually put them in the chat box. Now, one of the questions we often get early in a webinar is, can we have access to the slide deck? A lot of good information there, a lot to digest. So I have just sent to you all, hopefully you all see this, saying welcome. And if you'd like the slide deck, just go ahead and email me at james.barham@wdc.usda.gov. And it's right there in the chat box. It'll be there the whole time. Put that down and I'd be happy to send you a PDF version of this slide deck. Okay, so without further ado, just a quick overview of what we're going to do with this webinar. As Chad mentioned, there is an amazing convergence between local food and co-op and the cooperative movement, and we're also seeing that, and no surprise actually, within the farm to school community as well. So I'm going to give a little brief overview about the role of USDA and rural development in cooperatives and local food. And then we'll have Andrea Northrup from our Food Nutrition Service give a farm to school overview. And then we're going to dig deep with, which I think will be after the talking heads, the politicals stop talking, the USDA folks will really dig down and get to hear kind of the producer food hub perspectives from co-op leaders as well as the buyer perspectives. And then I'll wrap up with a few resources to share with you all and then open it up for questions. So our first presenters will be myself and Andrea Northrup, and once I go through my little spiel, I'll give a little bit more of an introduction of Andrea's background. So I sit, and Chad is the head of Cooperative Programs Rural Development. Just wanted to let you know, if you didn't, that this is a place stacked with professionals who conduct research and training and technical assistance for cooperatives across the country. We manage grant programs as well as provide these education technical assistance resources. So please use this as a resource. A lot of good information on our website. And I'll come back to that a little bit at the end of this webinar. on some of those resources. Within that cooperative programs, we've built up a portfolio of local regional food systems work, so there's also an opportunity to dive a little deeper in terms of the work the rural development is doing on food systems work. This is also a place where we'll host a lot of our webinars. So this webinar included will be recorded and it will be accessible to the public. A few days after this ends, we'll post it up there once we get the transcript right and everything else. All of this also at kind of a wider level is connected to a departmental initiative, Know Your Farm and Know Your Food, which has been around since 2009. And it is kind of our one-stop shop for all resources and information related to food systems development. So I encourage you, we've recently updated the website, and we've recently updated a really cool mapping tool that allows us to chart, allows you to locate and identify local food projects across the country. And those have been in since 2009, so it's a lot, thousands and thousands of projects, and opportunity for you to dig deeper into your own community of what are some of the food systems work happening, and of course a lot of it is related to the cooperative work as well. So why is USDA involved in food systems work? And we see it really as a strategy to meet many goals. And one of the goals that we're going to be talking about today is increased access to healthy food through farm-to-school programs. And we know there's a convergence between food systems and co-ops, a growing convergence that's happened over many years. We've, probably at one of the most earlier stages of the early champions of local food was consumer co-ops that were looking for different types of products, looking for local products, for healthier products, and not finding them, and so either starting their own food co-op or encouraging their food co-op, food retail, the kind of grocery co-op, to start shelving and putting local food onto their shelves and into their stores. And we also saw it within producers and the producer co-ops that have formed who are taking advantage of the local food demand that's happening across the country. So we know that this convergence is happening, and it just as you can expect is happening within the farm-to-school movement as well. And one of the things, it's not just about co-ops and local food. Part of the convergence and part of why I think there's a lot of excitement with both co-ops and local food systems is kind of a shared set of values. And I thought we do have a group of folks here. I'm sure some of you are co-op experts, but on the other hand, some of you might be coming from kind of a farm-to-school perspective and not really sure what exactly are cooperatives anyway. And so I've laid out here, it's kind of a technical definition, but the bottom line is businesses and organizations that are jointly owned and democratically controlled enterprises that have a set of values that are associated with them, things like self-help, democracy, equality, equity, solidarity, trying to develop a system of practices where honesty, openness, and social responsibility are integrated and ingrained within both the members and the overall mission of the cooperative. So when you think of those values, they don't differ all that much. In fact, there is a lot of convergence parallel between that and the values that are espoused within local food systems, or in this case, talking about a community-based food system where any food system, if you look into the inner ring here, there's always going to be the production and the processing and the distribution and the retailing of the products, and of course the eating of those food products. That's going to happen within any food system. Within a community-based food system, it's instilled with a set of values that mean a lot to the people who are eating and preparing and living within these particular communities. And it could be that they're supporting their local producers because of economic development. It could be because of environmental stewardship. And you can see all the other values here. And then you can clearly see that there's a lot of these same values that are embedded within the cooperative movement. And I think that is one of the key pieces that has brought these two movements together. And when I think of cooperative businesses, I'm also talking and thinking about the supply chains by which they're moving that product from farm to fork. And that's where we look at this idea of food value chains. And I think it's embedded at the core of what cooperative businesses do is that, yes, they are structuring to create financial success. They are first and foremost businesses, but there's also a social benefit that they want to see accrue to their community, to the members of their cooperative that goes beyond just the financial bottom line. And I think that's what we're also seeing with food hubs and other local food enterprises, where there's a shared set of mission and operational values. And it's a little hard to probably see on your screen, but the idea of shared mission values would be something that the entire supply chain is supporting farm viability or farmland preservation, or in our particular case, healthy food access, ensuring that kids have healthy, safe, affordable food, nutritious food for their schools. And at the same time, operational values about transparency and open communication. Again, these are things that are all emblematic that we are seeing occur within local food and co-ops, and even more specifically with farm to school. So now that was my kind of broad framing of a lot of this. I'm not sure how helpful or not it was, but I think more important and more fun in terms of digging a bit deeper into the farm to school stuff is having Andrea talk about her, which is a relatively new office of community food systems that lead up the farm to school efforts. So what a little background on Andrea before she gets going is, as you can see, she's the farm to school regional lead in the Mountain Plains region. So she's relatively new to the position. Her old buddy and my old buddy, Vanessa Zyphon, used to be in the Midwest, and she left us sadly, but we are very happy to have Andrea step up and be our new regional lead for the Midwest. So she's now in the Denver, Colorado office, having moved from Minnesota, the land of co-ops, although I think Wisconsin might have something to say about that, where she was the farm to school coordinator for the Minneapolis Public Schools. And prior to that, actually, she was in my backyard in DC as the farm to school network. So lots of experience. Welcome, Andrea.
Thank you very much, and thanks for that warm introduction. And I'm really excited to be on the call today. I know in my former position at Minneapolis Public Schools, we really counted on co-ops to really actualize our farm to school program, whether that's working with the food co-ops, working with cooperatives of farmers, you name it. So happy to dig in here. Jim covered this really well, but this is a definition that we use about what is a community food system, and I think I loved his concentric circles there to show that it's really a food system where all aspects of that food system are aligned to really improve the health of the community, and that's health in a broadly defined term. It's environmental health, it's the health of the food system, and the health of the community it serves. And similar to the values of the cooperative movement, food security, sustainability, proximity, so how local things are, and self-reliance are 4 of the core values of a community food system. So how this relates to the USDA Farm to School program, our Office of Community Food Systems was created in 2010 through the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act, really for 3 main reasons. First, to distribute grant funding to improve access to local foods, provide training and technical assistance, and to disseminate research and data. And the way community food systems really apply to schools is through increasing access to local food, and then that food education. So, encouraging students and children to learn more about where their food comes from as a way to then encourage them to eat that local food when it shows up on their lunchroom trays. So this type of work can happen in schools. It can happen in tribal schools or tribal communities. It can happen in summer meal programs where breakfast, lunches, dinners, snacks are served at summer meal sites. It can take place in preschool settings through the Child and Adult Care Feeding Program. And all sorts of educational components apply. The stereotypical or the one that we most think about is school gardens as a way to educate kids about where their food comes from. We can also think about farm visits, so bringing the farm or farmers to the school, or having youth go out to farms on field trips. And then some of that more traditional nutrition education can be a component of farm to school. So while school lunch and local food in school lunch is one area where farm to school is that's what we typically think about, it's really so much more. And we're really seeing a lot of benefits associated with farm to school. These are some facts that came out in some recent studies just about students being more willing and open to try new foods once they're exposed to a farm to school program. They're actually eating more fruits and vegetables, and then that improved awareness and knowledge about food and where it comes from can really inform healthy eating choices. And so we have in the school marketplace, we have a lot of money that's being spent on food, and so this is a really great opportunity for it to really invigorate the local food economy where those schools are situated. So a little bit about our Office of Community Food Systems. We have some national office staff that oversee some of the functions of the office. And then we're set up with regional leads. I'm in the Mountain Plains Regional Office, but then I have 6 other counterparts who are really the eyes and ears on the ground in the various regions of the country. And you'll see little italics that reflect the specialty areas of those particular regional office staff. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our Farm to School grant program. We've funded about 300 projects across the country since 2012 or fiscal year 2013. And actually our request for applications was announced last month and is due in December. So if you're looking for an infusion of funds to take your Farm to School program to the next level, you should check out our Farm to School grants. We also provide technical assistance, and that's in the form of a lot of different fact sheets clarifying some of the rules about buying locally and incorporating school garden produce in school meals, for example. It also includes our Procuring Local Foods for Child Nutrition Programs booklet, which is a lengthy document that has everything you need to know about buying local in school CACFP or summer meal programs. We also have a toolkit that matches worksheets with YouTube videos that kind of walk a school or school community through the farm to school process and kind of help you get started. In terms of research, our main effort is the USDA Farm to School Census, and our 2015 Farm to School Census data was recently released and is all in a really great visually appealing website that you can check out, and you can actually drill down to the school district level and see what schools in your communities are buying in terms of local food and what food education activities are going on. So that's a great resource if you haven't seen it. And finally, I'll encourage you to sign up for our newsletter. It's called The Dirt, and it's a really great, concise newsletter with really pretty pictures that keeps you up to date with all of the latest happenings in the Office of Community Food Systems. So you hear about our grants, technical assistance, webinars, etc. I definitely recommend signing up for it if you haven't. And I'll close here with a great picture from actually Southwest Colorado, where I met a school district that is serving locally raised yak burgers for a special Colorado Proud School Meal Day. And so with that, I will turn it over to our next presenter, and you can contemplate how awesome this school district was for investing in their local ranching community.
Thanks, Andrea. That's really interesting. Yak burgers. I think that's a first for me. Locally raised yak.
They said it went over really well, and I can't say that I've had one myself, but apparently they were pretty good.
Nice. Love it. Well, thank you, Andrea. First, I have to say something that's just a little personal. I always have PowerPoint envy anytime I see Farm to School because their slide decks are just so beautiful. But it's not just how beautiful they look, which it is. It's just always chock full of great information. So thanks again. We'll hold questions that folks might have for you all, and go ahead and move on to our co-op presenters today. And we have 3 of them. Let me bring up their bios. First is Jennifer Rangert, or Jenny. She just actually recently joined Fifth Season Cooperative this April, but she's been involved in local food system and farm-to-school programming work for over 6 years, which stemmed from her experience actually working with Organic Produce Company. She's also experienced the farm-to-school program from a school perspective as both a preschool and Head Start teacher. And Jenny also manages her family's organic farm with her 2 sisters, offering an organic CSA program to the local communities. So Jennifer, welcome, and it's all yours.
Great. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, and I apologize ahead of time for my voice because I'm fighting a little bit of a virus, so I apologize for that. But thank you for the warm welcome, and again, I joined Fifth Season back in April, and my role as a member and sales coordinator is to work with all the different members of our cooperative. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Fifth Season, what kind of cooperative we are, and then how we work with the Farm to School program. First of all, what is Fifth Season Cooperative? Fifth Season started back in 2010, and we were the first multi-stakeholder cooperative made up of 6 different member levels, and it encompasses all areas of the local food infrastructure. First of all, it starts with producers, which include our farmers. Producer groups, a group of farms under one particular name, such as Easy Farming or Spring Valley Produce, something like that. Our processors, which is our value-added products, which include jams and jellies, yogurt, our meat producers. Also our distributor members, broadline distribution businesses such as Reinhardt and Cisco Foods. Our buyers, which are our customers, schools, hospitals, universities, restaurants, and other institutions. And then finally, with the 6th member level is our workers, and those are members of the Fifth Season staff. What do? We are a cooperative that addresses all different aspects of the local food infrastructure, and we create the connections to allow all of the members to succeed and grow. And as you see with our visual on the side, you can see how we're kind of in the middle, and we work our way out with all of the different partners and members of our cooperative. And we serve as a single point of contact between all of those different members. We are also a cooperative that works with all of our different members to ensure that we have an existing pricing structure so that all of our members can thrive and grow their businesses, and also keep the quality of their product and their identity intact as it moves through the distribution system. We also work to provide regional food access, and there's a lot of different definitions of what local is. And we define local as within 150 miles of Viroqua, which puts us in southwest Wisconsin, southeast Minnesota, northeast Iowa, and northwest Illinois. So we are able to encompass a lot of the Midwest. We also promote sustainability. And what does it mean to be sustainable for us? We expect to be good stewards of the land and water, be biodiverse, treating animals humanely, and making sure that the workers and farms are socially just. And then we are also working to be economically viable for all of our members. Our focus is to make buying local easier. So my role as a member coordinator is I am that center point of contact for the smaller businesses to get into broadline distributors such as Reinhardt and Cisco Foods. And what I can do is I can help them make getting their products into those distributors easier. And this also, on the other side, makes it easier for customers to order locally and support local small business through their distributors. It also ensures fair pricing through cooperative agreements as food moves within the system, allowing purchases to be cost effective. Assists the institutions to incorporate methods to realign their budgets and include local organic foods. And this also gives institutions the tools to promote local foods and educate. So how does this fit in with the Farm to School program? The way that it works the best is to make the accessibility to local items easier through their partner distributors. So when they work with their distributors through the schools and they are in search of a local item. They can look for fifth season items and know that it's within that 150-mile radius. We also ensure the food safety and the quality of products that are by going through annual farm audits and visits, which is also part of my job. And then we also provide farm and producer information to make the connection between the food and who is growing it, and we can give that information to the schools and they can utilize it within their institutions. And on this slide, it's just an example of one of the things that we do. We work with the Coulee Region Farm to School program and with their Harvest of the Month calendar. And we develop this calendar with them. We have our planning meetings, and we're able to go through and discuss the different items that people would be interested in having for their Harvest of the Month. And part of our discussion is we talk about seasonality, what the feasibility is of getting these products into the schools, what kind of volume they're going to need, and if I can ensure that kind of supply. And then also taking a look at cost and making sure that it's feasible for the schools to be able to bring in a certain item, and also that it'll work for the farmer as well. And where are we headed? As with any new growing business, we've had a lot of challenges and opportunities as we're looking to gain sustainability and profitability. At the end of September, we are up about 70% over last year, which makes 2016 one of our best years since we started. And some of the things that we looked at during this year is taking a look at the pricing and making sure everything was working with not only our farmers, but also on the end for our customers as well. So we had some discussion about pricing in within our distributors as well. We also increased our producer and processor memberships, which also included 2 aquaponics growers and greenhouse growers, which is going to extend our fresh produce availability. And we also added another meat producer, which we do have grass-fed meat going into the schools currently as well. We also added a second larger broadline distributor with Cisco Foods. And we're also offering organic. In the past, we were mainly looking at conventional produce, but now we have an organic line as well. And we've also increased our communication and education about what is locally available with our customers. A lot of people think that it's simply produce or maybe jams or jellies or things like that, but there's so many other things that are produced locally, like grains, yogurts, and things like that, that people are really excited to know that they can get it within that 150-mile radius. And continuing on with this current sales and growth each month, we anticipate reaching our profitability by the end of 2017. And if you have any questions, you feel free to contact me at any time. And thank you for your time.
Great. Thanks so much, Jenny. I personally have a lot of questions, and I'm gonna go ahead and take this opportunity to ask one or two right now.
Sure.
So, multi-stakeholder cooperatives. Like, it is hard to get my head around. So, are you saying like someone like Cisco, one of the largest broadline distributor in the country, are they a cooperative member or just someone you do business with?
They are a cooperative member. They are a distributor member. So okay. They have purchased a membership with us, and so they are one of our 4 distributors actually that we work with. We have 2 smaller distributors, and then Reinhardt and Cisco are our 2 larger.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And then, and likewise, the buyers, the schools themselves are also members of the cooperative.
Yes, a couple of them are, yes, because there's one particular school district that we work with, the Holman School District, that does a lot with their school garden, and also they're doing chickens this year too, so they're doing a meat type of situation as well, and so they are able to work through us to get their items into Reinhardt and be able to get it into the schools through that way as well. So
fascinating. I have a lot more, but now
sure.
I've gotten some other folks here that have started to chime in. So let me talk about. There was two questions here. Do you follow one vote per member or a relative power vote?
If each member has a vote, so each membership has a vote. So if you're joining as a producer, you have a vote. If you're joining as a processor, you have a vote. If you're joining as a distributor, you also have a vote there.
And that's a vote per your membership class or for any business that occurs?
We do have a board of directors, so we have our board that meets once a month, but if there's issues that need to be brought directly to the full cooperative, those people are able to do that as well.
Right, that's great.
For those situations.
Okay, yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense. There was another question. It's a little less about cooperatives, but about your business model. It says, can you talk a little bit more about what you mean by adjusting prices at multiple points in the system?
What we take a look at, and just as an example of how with my work, when we're looking at the fair pricing and ensuring fair pricing for everyone, we try to make it as feasible as possible for everyone to afford the local food. So what I take a look at is I take a look at the market pricing, things like that, and for a particular product, and say, okay, this is what the fair market value is for this particular item, and then we do a small percentage markup, and then taking a look at it going into the distributors, we give suggested prices of what would be feasible for the institutions to afford, because sometimes everyone has a little bit different markup of what and of the type of margin that they would like to see on their product.
Right.
Sometimes it can be, and sometimes that particular markup doesn't always work for the end customer. So that's where I have a conversation and saying, okay, if we can bring it to this price, your customer from the institution or the school is going to be able to buy more of that, and they're going to be able to do more business with you if we have it at a more fair price. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does actually.
Okay.
Thank you. Well, at least for me.
Okay.
It's sometimes only a one-way conversation, or just
right.
No, but thank you, Jennifer. And I am always amazed by this particular type of cooperative model and what it says about being able to have all these different stakeholders be at the table, and what that ultimately means for transparency, accountability, communication, accountability. All these things can be accomplished because you literally all have skin in the game. You're all members of the same business. So I know we could go a lot deeper, and we can certainly take more questions from folks. But let's go ahead and move on, for at least right now, to our other two speakers. And so I'm going to introduce both of them together because they've worked very closely together through the years. The first is Krista Garan, and she's the Food Service Director for Durango School District in Southwest Colorado. And she's also one of the founding members of the Colorado Farm to School Task Force and has participated in farm to school activities since 2005. And her colleague, Janet Vogel, is also a food service director, but over at the Mancos School District in Southwest Colorado. And she's been part of the farm to school and local buying co-op for 5 years. And Janet has a history of working to develop community food systems since 2006. So both Janet and Krista are going to talk about the local buying co-op that they helped to establish, and we'll start with Krista.
So thank you for inviting us today. So I'll be speaking about a co-op from a slightly different perspective as an informal purchasing group that was formed here in Southwest Colorado with 7 school districts. And the co-op was formed solely for the purchase of local foods. So before I get into the formation of that co-op, there's a little bit of history behind our Farm to School program. As mentioned, we started in 2005. So back in 2005, there were really limited resources available to help develop Farm to School. And so we developed a lot of farmer connection meetings, doing things like speed dating events where we had producers and chefs and food service directors in a room together where we could learn about what farmers were growing and when things were available and when we could purchase, and started incorporating some of those items into our programs through our salad bars, and then eventually focusing on days like National School Breakfast and Lunch Weeks and Colorado Proud, and so starting to try to add local foods on those specific days. So in the beginning, we really started with very small purchases from farmers and just featuring those items, sometimes even on one salad bar at one school. And so this slide just sort of reframes that information. So starting the Farm to School program by making those farmer connections, and then gradually increasing those purchases of local food, getting those items on the menu, more days, out to more students at more schools, trying to reach the whole population of kids eating in the program. And so once we got to a point where we were able to buy enough food to feed all the kids on a specific day, a local meal, we got to a point where we needed to start getting farmers to grow more food for us. And so the way that we did that was we took 7 small districts and combined one group. So the idea behind the purchasing group was to show farmers what the potential was for them to grow more food. So within that small purchasing group, we ended up creating a specific farm to school bid with food safety regulations. And in order to make that process successful, we had conferences with farmers and food service directors in the same room to discuss how that process could work and what it meant to respond to a school bid and how farmers could get their product into schools more easily. And so once we got past that point, we had such a tremendous amount of success with getting farmers on board and being able to make larger food purchases that it created a need for greater infrastructure to handle the volume of the purchases from local farmers. And so in Southwest Colorado, the 7 districts, this just gives a little basic information about our enrollment sizes. So you can see that Durango is the largest at 4,670 students last year, and we're just slightly over 5,000 this year. And then Janet, my colleague from Mancos, is going to speak and showing that that district is as small as 496 students. So with 496 students, it's a little harder to have buying power. So you can see that combined, we have much greater buying power, and we could show the farmers what we could actually purchase. And so here's just a short list of farmers that we're currently working with. We've been working with up to 19 farmers at any given time in a school year. And so our products range from dried pinto beans to cornmeal to carrots and tomatoes, cucumbers, potatoes, and fruits too, so apples, pears, peaches. So we have this list of farmers this year is who we're working with. So a little bit about our farm to school bid. So when purchasing local food, we chose to define local as within a 250-mile radius. So Durango is located only 45 miles from the New Mexico border. So if we were to say we only wanted to purchase within Colorado, we would really be limiting ourselves to a 45-mile radius. So we went as far out as 250 miles. And we also specified delivery criteria for the participating schools, the products, the specs, the usage, allowance for variations on pack size or a different variety that a farmer may be able to grow. And then within that bid, we are an informal group, and so we use the bid process to show our purchasing power as a collective, but then each producer bids actually to the individual school district that they want to provide the food to. So we created this form which gives the farmer the ability to tell us what product that they can deliver, the variety of that product, case sizes, projected deliveries, amounts they think that they can deliver, how many deliveries they think they can do, and then of course the pricing structure. And it's the pricing structure that drives the purchasing. So each farmer responds to the individual school districts. We get together as a whole and then go through these response sheets together. We also created some on-farm food safety. So in Southwest Colorado we work with mostly small farmers, and so a lot of the larger regulation around food safety doesn't apply to some of these small farmers, and so we created our own farm-to-school food safety checklist that's required as part of the bid. And so each farmer now that we work with has a food safety plan, and this was developed in conjunction with farmers and based on GAP protocols. So each heading comes directly from those GAP protocols, but we worked with small farmers to identify what was reasonable for a small farmer to respond to in a food safety plan. And so every farmer responds to the bid with the food safety plan and the checklist. And then this checklist is what the food service directors use when they go out to a farm for a visit. So when we want to go check up on their practices, we look at what they said they do on their safety list, and then we can compare that to what we see. So in the end, this year I wrote two different grants. One was a USDA implementation grant, and then another one to the Colorado Health Foundation, because we've had such success with our cooperative and have increased the amount of food that we're purchasing to a level where we were unable to receive that safely anymore. So we actually built an aggregation center within our high school that is just for local foods. And so it's given us the capability to make larger purchases from our producers and also provide infrastructure for some of the smaller school districts and really greater food safety management. So this photo back in 2005, when we used to get deliveries from farmers, a lot of times they were just in the back of their vehicle, delivered in random crates and baskets and things, and we were just excited to get that food and be putting local farm food out there on our salad bars. And then this photo shows now with our aggregation center, we can see consistent pack sizes. You can see the difference in the size of the delivery and reliable containers, proper storage, compliance and food safety. And this aggregation center serves the 7 districts on the bid, so we bring food in and we can distribute to the other districts that don't have the infrastructure. And I'm going to hand it over to Janet.
Hi, thank you. I'm from the Mingus district, and I am about 30 miles west of Krista. And as she mentioned, we do work pretty closely together. And it's, having this aggregation center really has opened up capabilities for us as well. As you can see here up on the screen, we are a pretty high free and reduced community, which means there's not a lot of access to fresh fruits and vegetables to our community members. So being able to bring in local foods to the school through Farm to School is really a great resource for this community, as they may only get these particular items from the school district. When we first started this with Krista about 5 years ago, again, we did have, as a small district, we had faced our own challenges. Very small infrastructure. We had very minimal equipment in the kitchen, very small kitchen, very little storage space. So when we started the Farm to School program, as you saw in the back of her car there, that slide previous where farmers would bring small portions of food to us, that's kind of how we had to function, and I didn't have places to store that food. So we were only able to take on very small portions at a time, and we kind of still are, as you will see in a couple slides ahead. But as a small district, we didn't have a lot of buying power. Farmers would come to the back door, and I was able to only take on maybe 20 pounds, 30 pounds of what they had available. And that would limit me to only being able to serve that food maybe one day a week. I also wrote for a grant through the Colorado Health Foundation for an equipment grant. Equipment grant. I'm sorry. And we were able to bring in. We pretty much re-outfitted our entire kitchen with new equipment, bringing us up to speed so that we can actually do more scratch cooking. We can prep the food safely. We can now bring in more of this food and the local foods and be able to use them in not only our salad bars but in our main dish menu options. So when we talk about the co-op, we are able to streamline this process by utilizing the hub, the Krista's aggregation hub. I'm going to switch over to this next slide. I apologize. I'm kind of stumbling here. Okay, so this is a photo of what our kitchen actually looks like. As you can see, it's pretty minimal. Back there in the corner behind the ladies is our refrigeration and freezer. So on the left there, there we go. On the left you see a cooler, and the right you see a cooler. Those are our only two refrigeration sources, and then back behind that is the door to our walk-in freezer, which isn't much bigger. So being able to take on a lot of these foods that the local farmers are bringing us, it's pretty difficult to store all of that. And so by using the co-op and utilizing the aggregation center, I'm able to serve these local foods on a more regular basis. And it also extends our season. Some of the items that I would no longer be able to hold can be held in Krista's cooling storage refrigerator. For example, apples, root vegetables, all of those items that hold for a longer period of time, I can come now on a daily or a weekly basis, pick those items up, and now I have them available throughout the week rather than having to only be able to put those items on my salad bar or on my my menu item, main menu item once or twice a week. Now I'm able to do it on a more wide basis. I can do it every day. And it also helps us with food safety. Us food service directors in small districts and large districts, we wear many hats. And prior to us having the food co-op, we a lot of times would be driving out to farms on our own, picking up our own food, which is time consuming. And so by doing this, it has kind of streamlined the process and putting it at a much easier way for us to distribute food on a more regular basis. So that kind of concludes what we do here. And just in conclusion here, you know, it's great to be able to do this. Gives us bigger buying, purchasing power, but it also, in the bottom line, it really is about the kids. And our goal is to serve healthy, nutritious food for our kids, and the co-op allows us to do this. So I'm going to hand this back over to Krista here real quick to let her close, and thank you for having us. And if you have any questions, please let us know.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Good close, Krista.
Yeah.
So I also have a lot of questions, and that's the one advantage of being the moderator. I can just ask what I want to ask. So I'm going to start by, because it's really interesting that, I mean, two things happening that really coalesce us together. One is just being able to bring all the different districts together in order to form a buying co-op to increase your bargaining position and purchasing power. But then also realizing that you needed some other physical assets to make this really work, that being the aggregation facility. So I mean, almost effectively you're running a food hub, because now you're managing orders, you're doing the aggregation, and then I'm assuming that at that point then you have to either do forward distribution to each of the school districts, or they need to pick up products, and we can get into that. I don't want to get too caught up in that aspect of it, but who ultimately manages all this? I mean, is it end up being you, Krista, because it's happening in Durango, or do you have a staff, or how does that all work? The manpower, sorry, the person power of this.
Yeah, so I'm not going to lie, it's a lot of coordination, it's a lot of work, and farm to school just is a lot of work in general. And remembering that, we started this process in 2005 where there really was no support, there were very, very limited resources, and so a lot of our farm to school program was put together through conferences with farmers and just really just gathering information of what works and what doesn't work and how we could do it. And so with the aggregation center, it was a lot of work to get it put in, and it takes a lot of coordination, and I do all of that. So it's
we need to clone you.
Yeah, in harvest season, I'm crazy. But, right now it's slowing down, and we're moving into more storage crops, onions and carrots and potatoes and things that we can bring in larger quantities and move out. But, September and halfway through October is just the photo of that cooler. It fills like that, and then it gets divided up and sent out, and the next week it looks the same. So, we're serving an abundance of local food. So one thing that we are doing with the aggregation center currently is that the way that our bid process is divided out, so the farmers actually respond individually to each food service director. And so we currently have a model where each food service director is responsible for their own purchases. Now those items may be delivered to our aggregation center, but they're invoiced separately. So we are, in essence, just a holding facility, and then I work with each individual food service director to pick up their product, and we have protocols on length of time we can hold food and all kinds of things. But so it does minimize some of the work. I am dividing things and receiving large orders, but we are separating that work out in the sense that farmers are invoicing directly to each district.
Okay.
So I don't know if that answers.
No, yeah, absolutely. And I can see how that can help alleviate some of the burden if they're doing some of their own purchasing. Now, here's a question, and then it may lead to a follow-up question depending on how you answer. Are your school districts self-operated, or do you work with a food service company like Chartwell's or Aramark?
They're all self-operated in
That's
Southwest.
okay. And the question had a follow-up if you were not self-operated, but I almost assumed you were self-operated given your flexibility to do this. Now, I'm sure you've heard from other school districts, though, that are working through food service companies. Do you know of anybody who's been able to replicate your model outside of a self-operated that have been in the food service, or is it just becomes too restrictive, or you can't create the right type of partnership with these other food service companies?
The model in the sense of the buying co-op or the aggregation?
The buying co-op.
I think there's some other groups in the state of Colorado that are doing similar. I know in Greeley they have like 4 or 5 school districts that work together. So there's some other districts in the state. We've shared our bid information, we've shared our farm to school checklist and food safety information within the state. And so there are some other people following that same model.
Now that actually gets into another question, because one of our participants actually asked if you'd be willing to share your food safety checklist with them. Are you
Absolutely.
Comfortable if I go ahead and send people your email?
Absolutely, I've shared that checklist with a lot of people, and it's limited for really it pertains mostly to smaller farms, and so if you're a large school district working with really large farms, your the guidance now, they come under different rules. So if you're working with small farms, it's an excellent way to get the conversation started on food safety. So a lot of our small farms don't have the kind of food safety things in place that schools require. So the Farm to School checklist is an excellent way to get that conversation started.
Okay, awesome. That's great. Okay, so there will be more time for more questions. So people who are still with us, and we've got 60 still, utilize that chat box. I'm going to just shift over for just a couple minutes and talk about some of the other resources at USDA. As probably many of you know, USDA really can offer support all along the supply chain, from the production all the way to the consumption of products. And this next slide, which I've presented many times now, is expected and intended to overwhelm in some ways, because on this infographic of sorts you can see, or this just basically chart of that, when we talk about assistance in the local regional food system space, we have close to 30 USDA programs across 7 different agencies that offer assistance. Because I'm a supply chain junkie, I like to set things up by different activities that happen within that supply chain. So if you are a producer dealing with production, we've highlighted what we think are some of the key programs you should be looking at. Similarly, if you're processing or aggregating, what are some of those programs? And I heard Janet and Krista talk about how they've actually even utilized, well, I'm not sure if you applied or you are or already got a grant to do Farm to School, which helped with the aggregation facility. Maybe we'll get some clarification on that, because that would be an interesting one for folks to look into. But there's a lot of programs at rural development, of course. Ours are in blue, and ones like the Rural Business Development Grant have been great in this space. Value Added Producer Grant, a lot of producer co-ops have been able to utilize that particular program. And community facilities is a wonderful one for Farm to School for a lot of folks, where they have loans and grants, which should, like how Janet said, they had to refit. Sorry, now I'm getting mixed up. I think it was actually Krista, or one of you were able to apply for a grant in order to get new equipment. I think it was Janet, now that I think about it. And you went through a foundation in Colorado. Well, you could also be applying for a grant from community facilities to get the type of equipment that allow you to do scratch cooking, prepare food, or ultimately even store food to benefit that community. So there's a lot of USDA resources there. There certainly isn't time to go through them all, but I just hope that you take a gander at this particular slide. If you go to Know Your Farmer, Know Your Food, this infographic, you can find it. It's on one of the front pages of where it talks about resources, and all these have hyperlinks. Every one of these programs have hyperlinks to it, so you can go directly to those programs to find out more information. And I'd be happy to answer a few more questions at the end of this webinar on specific programs if you have them. But we don't just throw money out the door. We also have a lot of technical assistance, guidance documents and reports and resources. You heard from Andrea, like Farm to School has amazing resources to support, like everything from local procurement to how you manage the food safety, and questions that come up either on the production side or on the consumption side, or how you would handle products and all that kind of good stuff. So they have tons of resources. And at Rural Development we have quite a few as well. On the kind of Regional Food Enterprise Food Hub side of things, we've got a technical report series. Talks a lot about best practices, starting a food hub, as well as how to maintain a financially viable food hub. So we've got these resources. You can download them on our cooperative programs page. And as I mentioned at the top of the hour, we also have tons of resources on our cooperative programs, including one of the most robust libraries of co-op publications in the country, possibly in the world. And again, they're free. We have a lot of hard copies of these as well. If you're actually doing a training yourself or would like to learn more and don't want to read something online, we can have hard copies. Or if you want to save a tree, you can certainly download them electronically. So I recommend checking out those resources. And just so you know, and this is to give a little shout out to Wisconsin, since Minnesota was getting a shout out, and it was clarified that in fact Minnesota is number 1, more co-ops incorporated than anybody else, but Wisconsin is number 2, and they do happen to have a very good cooperative development center with some excellent resources. And I also just wanted to highlight that USDA supports directly cooperative development technical assistance and training through our cooperative development centers. And these cooperative development centers do a lot to help cooperatives either start or help them expand, deal with financing issues, legal issues, and you can find a full listing of our cooperative development centers. It's a really ridiculously long link, so if you just do an internet search of Cooperative Development Center list, you will in fact get right to the PDF which lists all the different cooperative development centers in our state, in your state. And then there's also Cooperation Works, which is the National Organization of Cooperative Development Centers and Practitioners. Lots of great resources there as well. So by all means, check that stuff out. And it doesn't end there. There's always more. A number of other organizations that work to support cooperatives across the country. So now that I've given my little spiel, we are going to return to the questions. And one of the questions, and this was almost like a plug or a softball, because I know it came from one of our RD folks out in Oregon actually. And the question had to do with how have USDA RD programs assist the fifth season? So I'm actually very interested, Jennifer, and it doesn't just have to be USDA resources, but can you tell us a little bit about, the fifth season's been around for a while now. Tell us about some of the resources they've been able to tap into in order to establish and expand upon the fifth season cooperative model.
Actually, it's a very good question, and the USDA has been actually a really integral part in getting fifth season started, starting out with the cooperative development section of it. We have Margaret Bow, who was involved with, from cooperative development, who was involved with the startup and getting fifth season started back in 2010. And then she also continues to be an advisor for us as well. As far as particular grants, we did receive the value-added production grant, processing grant, and what that did is fifth season developed 2 frozen blends, vegetable blends to use within institutions and schools and hospitals and things like that. And what the VAPG did for us is it helped with the processing cost of that, also purchasing the produce and then launching the product and for storage. So that was a really good grant for us to be able to kick off 2 different blends that we could utilize to have local produce available all year round, not just during the high season. And then we also were able to receive the local food promotion grant as well, and that also helped. That was focused more on the marketing aspect of our frozen blends and moving those into different school districts, specifically into Illinois and into Chicago. So that really supported us quite a bit in that as well. So that the grants and the USDA have been a huge part of getting us rolling on a couple of different big projects. So.
No, that's great. I had a feeling you had gotten some USDA grants, and certainly there's other avenues of using member equity to help raise funds and so forth. But yeah, the local food promotion program has certainly been a good grant program for a lot of food hubs and producer and distributors, as well as the value-added producer grant program. Now here's a question. Since we were talking food safety with Janet and Krista, and the checklist and how they kind of set up their protocols to ensure that they got healthy, safe food coming through their system. This one's less about food safety, but about food waste. And I'm curious, how do you handle? And this was a question that came in earlier. How do you handle or mitigate food waste within your co-op? Do you have? Since you have everyone at the table, there is an opportunity, and I'd like to ask this question to Krista and Janet too about food waste, but there is an opportunity to really figure out, because it's really farm to fork because you have all the members there, of reducing food waste. Do you have anything kind of practices or best practices you guys utilize?
Well,
I'm going to start with Janet. I'm going to start with Jennifer, then I'll go to Krista and Janet.
Oh, okay, go.
Oh, no problem. As far as food waste with us, with fifth season, we don't have a lot of it actually, because a lot of the orders that we do, specifically with fresh produce and things like that, are custom ordered. So there's very little that we bring in to store. We don't necessarily act as a storage facility for long-term storage. So we do more of a custom order type of cycle where Our customers are ordering twice a week or once a week, and everything comes in within the next few days and then goes out the next day. So there isn't a lot that's left behind. But if there are farmers also that have additional product that they need to move, we also partner with another organization that's within our building here, and that's Community Hunger Solutions. So we're able to connect farmers with Community Hunger Solutions in order to have them move that food through, and so it doesn't go to waste on the farm, but is actually getting to more people who could utilize it as well.
Right. Okay, great. And Krista and Janet, maybe you can talk, and this is huge part, and I'm not saying that, you know, that local food is going to be the panacea for this, but there's a lot of you know, I go to my kids' schools, and it's shocking how much food gets thrown away from the, you know, the trays at the end of the lunch hour, and a lot of it, they only got like 10 minutes to eat, it seems like, and they're shoving everything in it, and then they leave half the stuff there. I mean, what have you been able to do to promote or reduce food waste through your system?
Sure. So this is Janet, and I'll speak to my end of it. Just being able to bring in food on a more regular basis by use of the aggregation hub has really limited our food waste. When we would bring it in smaller quantities, and we were limited on how we were able to put it out, then our cooks would have a harder time with utilizing all that food right within a few days, so it didn't get wasted. But if you're talking about actual plate waste within the cafeteria, in the very beginning when we first started Farm to School, and a lot of these kids weren't introduced to fruits and vegetables until they were joining us here at the school, then yes, we did see a little bit of it at first, but we also participate with a garden program at our school. And so by teaching the kids from the very beginning, putting the seed in the ground, growing it, bringing it into the harvesting, bringing it into the cafeteria, and then seeing it on their plate, it really brings it full circle for them. And those older kids that we started Farm to School with 5 years ago, we're seeing that those older kids that have been going through this now for 5 years with us are really starting to waste less and less food, and they actually are very disappointed if there isn't fresh food available for them.
And then this is Krista, and I'll just mention one more thing. And a lot of our local food purchases is driven by our menu. And so, you know, for instance, potatoes and things that it's driven by what we know we're going to use. And then the other piece is that we have salad bars in all 10 of our schools 5 days a week. So all of that local food goes out on our salad bars, and in Durango our salad bars are the vegetable of the day, and so 5 days a week it's always fresh fruits and vegetables on that bar. So we're utilizing all of our Farm to School products there as well. And we also do a lot of we do a lot of taste testing with kids, and so a lot of our meals are from scratch meals that also utilize our Farm to School products, and lots of, you know, fresh vegetables. And so we do a lot of taste testing with kids, and we try to incorporate menu items that they're going to like that actually use those items as well. And we just have high levels of consumption of fruits and vegetables in our district. The kids love them.
Great. No, thank you both for expanding upon that. And I have one last question that I'm going to ask both of you, Krista and Janet, and I think this is a question about, you've been successful in being able to set up this purchasing co-op and to really focus on increasing your local food procurement. Can you each give me one or two, you know, high-level points of like what you should know if you want to do? If I want to do this with 10 or 12 school districts in Virginia where I am, what do I need to know, or what would be, you know, where can we shorten the learning curve here and provide some kind of just good practices of, you know, things that where you thought, oh, this is going to be really important, take a lot of time, and doesn't, and then other things you thought, oh, this will be easy, and then all of a sudden you're overly consumed by that. I just love a few just high-level points from both of you about your experience and what advice you would give to others.
So this is Krista, and you know, the form that I showed where we had the farmers responding with what product they were going to provide, that took a lot of tweaking, and that took a lot of, the first time we put it out, we didn't have a form that really worked very well, and it was kind of a nightmare trying to decipher what the farmers meant, how much product they were going to deliver, all those kinds of things. But I'll also just say that, the success of our program comes through education. So here in Durango, we've put on 5 Southwest Farm to School conferences. We've done one a year for the last 5 years. And so each one of those conferences focuses on a different level of farm to school. So for instance, when we developed that farm to school checklist, we did one conference that was just about that checklist. What does it mean to have a food safety plan in place, and how do you write one, and what would be feasible for that checklist, and what does GAP even mean, and which pieces of it make sense for a small farm. And we've done other ones around food safety, what school district purchasing looks like, because you can get as many school districts together to form a co-op, but if nobody speaks the other language, you're never going to have a successful story. And so it took getting all of the food service directors in the same room, all of the producers in the same room, and even coming up with, terminology, a glossary of terms. What does it even mean what is procurement? What is a bid process? The farmers didn't speak our language, and we definitely didn't speak theirs. And so it's taken quite a few years of these educational environments of getting everybody in the same room to really have the level of success that we've had now.
Just to tag on to that, I think she pretty much covered everything. I wouldn't probably take away or add a whole lot to that, other than it really does make a big difference when you build those relationships with those farmers. And the better relationships you can build with them, the more communication that happens, and the more communication that happens, the more smoothly it goes. The first couple of years, we really did muddle through this, and us directors actually learned through the process as well. And so it's been really a learning process, but really you have to build that loyalty between the farmers and the districts, and so that they feel confident, and we feel confident as well.
And I'll just mention one more thing. In one of the conferences, we actually, I invited a couple of finance directors from districts to speak to farmers so that they could understand how school finance functions and why the pricing in a bid is so important. So that's another piece of the whole success, is getting farmers to understand, price points that school districts can work with.
Right, absolutely. So we have 1 minute left, but it's a quick question, and it's are the farm to school conferences that Krista mentioned and Janet that you guys do open to schools outside of Colorado? Is it really, this person's from Wyoming, but is it really just for those school districts in Colorado?
Well, yeah. We invite our local school districts. We invite lots of local producers, but anybody could come. We had one in the beginning. We had lots of people show up for that one because it was, 5 years ago when people were trying to get farm to school programs started. So if somebody's interested in what we're doing, they could always email me and I could let them know.
Yeah, and it might be a way for this particular participant in Wyoming to start setting up something similar like what you're doing in Colorado and Wyoming. So that's great. So we are at the time at 3:14, and that gives us 30 seconds to wrap this all up. And first and foremost, I just want to thank all of our speakers today, Andrea, Jenny, Krista, and Janet, for a fantastic presentation, for laying out a lot of different aspects of cooperatives and the intersection between that and local food. This recording, so thank you all. I'll give you a round of applause because I'm the only one that can do it. There you go. And I know. And I also want to just close by saying that this webinar will be recorded, and we'll be posting it to our site and making it available for everyone if you want to check it out again or to share with others within your own network. So with that, thanks very much for everyone's attendance and sticking with us through an hour and 15 minutes. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of Cooperative Month as well as Farm to School Month. Thanks everyone. Have a good day.